When men enter their 40s, something subtle but profound begins to shift inside the body. It's not loud and dramatic like a cardiac event or a sudden injury. It's not the kind of change that forces you into a hospital or into panic. Instead, it's a quiet negotiation between metabolism, hormones, stress, sleep, diet, and lifestyle. And the liver stands in the very center of that negotiation. The strange part is that most men don't notice the negotiation happening at all. They just notice that their recovery time has increased. Their energy has decreased, their cravings have changed, their waistline has grown, and their tolerance for alcohol, late nights, or heavy meals has weakened. The liver never announces this negotiation. It doesn't send pain signals because it doesn't really have pain nerves. It doesn't send burning sensations, sharp aches, or pressure. The liver communicates through outcomes, not symptoms. And outcomes take time, sometimes decades. That is why fatty liver is called a silent condition. Fatty liver doesn't hurt in the 40s. Inflammation doesn't hurt in the 50s. Fibrosis doesn't hurt in the 60s. By the time cirrhosis or cancer appears in the 70s or 80s, the silence has already worked for decades. Fatty liver, inflammation, fibrosis, cirrhosis, and cancer form. A sequence that often takes 10 to 30 years. But in men, it frequently begins earlier than anyone expects. Most cases of liver cancer are discovered decades after the first metabolic shift took place. The cancer is recorded in the 60s, but the story begins in the 40s, sometimes even the late 30s. It begins not with alcohol alone, but with the combination of sugar, stress, late-night eating, social drinking, reduced sleep, declining testosterone, sedentary routines, belly fat, and modern convenience foods. Each factor makes a modest demand on the liver. Together, they make the liver work overtime, day after day, year after year. Alcohol alone rarely explains the surge in fatty liver among middle-aged men. In many countries, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease now surpasses alcoholic liver disease, even among men who drink socially rather than heavily. What changed? Sugar drinks, high fructose syrups, energy drinks, bakery foods, processed snacks, delivery culture, midnight food culture, irregular meals, shift work, stress-induced eating, and drastically shortened sleep. Fructose is metabolized mostly in the liver and is converted into fat with remarkable efficiency. It is not dangerous because it is sweet. It is dangerous because it bypasses hunger, regulation, and insulin control, and lands directly in the liver's storage pathways. In the 40s, male hormones decline at about 1% per year. Lower testosterone reduces muscle mass and increases fat storage, mainly around the abdomen. Muscle tissue is the primary site of glucose disposal, so reduced muscle means reduced blood sugar control. Reduced blood sugar control means more insulin, more fat storage, and more work for the liver. Men don't realize this because it doesn't feel like illness, just aging. But aging is metabolic rearrangement, not something random. The liver orchestrates much of this rearrangement silently. Sleep also becomes less restorative. Many men go to bed after midnight, not because they can't sleep, but because work, family obligations, screens, and stress keep them up. The deepest phases of sleep, especially before midnight, are crucial for liver detoxification, metabolic clearance, hormone regulation, and bile production. When sleep is delayed or cut short, the liver loses recovery time and must perform both daytime and nighttime duties during the day. This is the equivalent of working a double shift with no overtime pay. Stress worsens the problem even more. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, increases blood sugar, reduces insulin sensitivity, suppresses testosterone, promotes fat storage, disrupts sleep, and increases cravings for sugar, caffeine, and alcohol. Stress is not psychological in the 40s, it becomes biochemical. The liver must metabolize stress hormones as much as it metabolizes alcohol or fructose. The modern workplace, especially for men in their 40s who often carry professional, financial, and family responsibilities simultaneously, produces a level of sustained stress that previous generations did not experience at the same intensity or duration. Now consider late-night eating. In the 20s, a late-night meal was merely a fun choice. In the 40s, it becomes metabolic sabotage. The liver expects rest after sunset, particularly after 10 p.m., to shift into repair and detoxification mode. When food enters the body after this window, insulin remains elevated. Fat burning is delayed, and the liver must convert incoming nutrients into storage. Over time, belly fat increases, triglycerides rise, and fatty liver forms. Many men believe they gained 10 kilograms out of nowhere. But it wasn't sudden. It was cumulative. Then there is alcohol. Alcohol is metabolized by the liver immediately because it is treated as a toxin. For the average man, the liver requires 48 to 72 hours to fully process a drinking session. If a man drinks 3 days a week, his liver is metabolically busy every day of the week. Even if the amount is moderate, frequency steals recovery time. And recovery time is exactly what the liver needs to reverse fatty liver, reduce inflammation, and repair damage. Meanwhile, the gut plays a significant role. The gut and liver are connected through a direct venous system. Everything absorbed in the gut goes to the liver first. When gut bacteria are balanced, they neutralize toxins, improve nutrient absorption, and reduce inflammation. When gut bacteria are imbalanced, inflammatory compounds travel to the liver and create more work. This is why belly fat, fatty liver, and poor gut health often appear together. They are not separate problems, they are one metabolic ecosystem. Most men do not develop fatty liver because they did something obviously unhealthy. They develop fatty liver because they lived as expected, worked too much, slept too little, ate irregularly, drank socially, snacked under stress, sat for long hours, and prioritized responsibility over recovery. This is why fatty liver has become the most common liver condition in the world. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a consequence of modern life colliding with human physiology. The encouraging part is that fatty liver is reversible, often dramatically so. Weight loss of 5% improves fatty liver. Weight loss of 10% reduces inflammation. Weight loss of 15% slows fibrosis. These are not theoretical numbers. If a man weighs 80 kilograms, 4 kilograms can change his scan, 8 kilograms can change his blood work, and 12 kilograms can change his long-term risk curve. The liver responds to consistency more than intensity. Extreme diets create extreme rebound. Moderate lifestyle shifts create stable metabolic change. The liver's timeline is long. Fatty liver improves in 3 to 6 months. Inflammation in 6 to 24 months. Fibrosis in 3 to 10 years. Cirrhosis may stabilize for decades if stressors are removed. Cancer takes decades and is more likely when diagnosis is delayed. The liver rewards those who think in years, not days. Modern health culture promotes quick results, but the liver promotes slow victories. Screening becomes essential precisely because symptoms are absent. Blood tests alone are not enough. Many men have fatty liver with perfectly normal liver enzymes. This creates a false sense of security. Ultrasound remains one of the simplest ways to detect fatty liver, inflammation, fibrosis, and cirrhosis without invasive procedures. For fatty liver, once per year is reasonable. For inflammation or fibrosis, every 6 months is wiser. Cirrhosis requires screening every 3 to 6 months, not solely for disease progression, but for cancer surveillance. Liver cancer has a recommended 6-month interval, because tumors can double in size within that period. It is surprising how much of liver health is shaped by timing rather than amount. For example, alcohol consumed once a week may be less harmful than small amounts consumed frequently. Food eaten at 10 p.m. disrupts metabolic clearance, far more than the same food eaten at 6 p.m. Sleep taken at midnight is less restorative than sleep taken at 10 p.m. Even if total hours are equal, the same calories eaten in the morning produce less fat storage than when eaten late at night. These details show that the liver is synchronized with circadian rhythms, day and night cycles that evolved long before modern life made clocks optional and screens constant. Exercise affects the liver indirectly. The liver burns fat by sending it to the muscles. When muscles are used consistently, they consume glucose and fatty acids, reducing demand on the liver. Walking is not trivial. It is metabolic leverage. A 30-minute walk after dinner reduces blood sugar, insulin spikes, and triglyceride formation. Resistance training improves testosterone and muscle mass, which reduces visceral fat and improves insulin sensitivity. None of these require athletic skill or high intensity. The liver prefers routine over heroics. Food choices matter too, but not in the restrictive way diet culture advertises. Protein reduces hunger, stabilizes blood sugar, and supports liver repair. Vegetables provide fiber for the gut and micronutrients for detoxification. Fermented foods support gut bacteria, which reduce inflammatory load on the liver. Water dilutes bile and aids fat processing. Tea and coffee have compounds that support liver function, though excess caffeine late at night disrupts sleep, and undermines recovery. The point is not perfection, it is support. Fatty liver has become so common that millions of men mistakenly assume it is harmless. But calling fatty liver harmless is like calling rust harmless, because it hasn't broken the metal yet. Rust is not the crisis, it is the start of the timeline. The timeline is what matters, and the timeline is what men can influence most. The most dangerous stage is not cirrhosis or cancer. The most dangerous stage is the stage that feels normal, where the liver suffers silently under habits that no one questions. Men in their 40s are expected to work late, eat late, think late, decide late, worry late, and recover late. But biology keeps the original schedule. Biology does not update for the economy, or for social expectations, or for ambition. Biology still insists that humans rest when the sun sets, wake when the sun rises, eat before dark, move often, sleep deeply, and eliminate stress regularly. The conflict between physiology and modern life is where disease begins, not at the doctor's office. Then there is the cultural layer. In many countries, alcohol is woven into family gatherings, business meetings, celebrations, networking, and bonding. Refusing alcohol is sometimes socially interpreted as disrespect, weakness, or disinterest. Men adapt to culture more than biology here. Yet the liver does not adjust to culture. It metabolizes alcohol the same way every time, using enzymes and antioxidants, producing acetaldehyde, and enduring oxidative stress. The liver does not understand commitments, deals, or friendships. It understands workload, and workload accumulates. Sugar, however, hides in plain sight. It appears in coffee drinks, bakery items, sauces, beverages, and energy bars disguised as health foods. Fructose blocks satiety signals and stores efficiently as fat in the liver. People underestimate sugar calories because they are not heavy, savory, or greasy. Sugar is light, effortless, and rewarding. Men use it for immediate energy when sleep is poor or stress is high. Coffee becomes a vehicle for sugar as much as caffeine. And energy drinks deliver caffeine and sugar together, increasing both stress hormones and liver load simultaneously. Believing that fatty liver requires alcohol is outdated. Many of the fastest-growing cases are non-alcoholic fatty liver, driven by metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is simply a cluster of overlaps: elevated blood sugar, elevated triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, elevated blood pressure, and increased waist circumference. Each component pushes the liver harder together. They trap the liver. The beauty of the liver, though, is its regenerative power. It is the only major organ that can regrow portions of itself. This is not a metaphor, it is anatomy. The liver can lose 30% of its mass and still regenerate. This regenerative ability is what allows lifestyle changes to have such profound effects. Men who reduce sugary drinks, stop late-night eating, and improve sleep for 3 to 6 months often notice belly fat shrinking, cravings decreasing, mental clarity improving, and energy returning. Blood work improves, imaging improves, sleep improves. Not because the changes were extreme, but because they were consistent. Consistency is the currency of liver health. The liver does not respond to a perfect day, but to a consistent 3 months. That is why one of the most powerful interventions for middle-aged men is to shift health, thinking away from punishment and toward rhythm. Punishment says I ate bad food, so I must starve tomorrow. Rhythm says I will stop eating by 7 p.m., I will sleep before midnight. I will drink water during the day, I will walk after dinner. The liver prefers rhythm. Men often assume that big problems require big solutions, but the liver disproves that. 5% weight loss is not dramatic. 10% is not athletic. 12 kilograms over a year is not extreme. Yet these numbers change the future. A lifetime of disease risk, medication, and complications can be delayed or prevented by changes that feel embarrassingly simple. Men have been misled to believe that health requires intensity. The liver teaches that health requires patience. Finally, there is the story of time. Time is the most underrated factor in liver disease and liver recovery. Liver disease takes 10 to 30 years to develop. Liver recovery takes months to years. Men have more time than they think. What they lack is awareness, not time. If a man in his 40s learns that liver cancer in the 60s begins with fatty liver in the 40s, he can change the trajectory before arrival. If he learns that sleep is not a luxury, that stress is metabolic, that alcohol is cumulative, and that sugar is not harmless, he can interrupt the chain. The question men eventually face is not, what disease do I have, but which trajectory am I on? Trajectories begin years before outcomes. If a man sleeps at 1 a.m., eats at 10 p.m., drinks 3 nights a week, stresses daily, moves minimally, gains visceral fat, and craves sugar, his trajectory points toward metabolic dysfunction. If he shifts bedtime to before midnight, stops late night, eating, drinks twice a month instead of twice a week, walks after dinner, drinks water instead of soda, and adds protein and vegetables, his trajectory changes. The numbers reflect this shift months later, not days later, which is why many men abandon lifestyle change prematurely. They expect cosmetic results rather than metabolic ones. But the liver changes before the mirror does. The mirror follows the liver, not the other way around. The liver is also the organ most influenced by what men stop, rather than what they add. Stopping sugary drinks removes a major source of fructose. Stopping late-night meals gives the liver nighttime recovery. Stopping frequent drinking gives the liver detox time. Stopping all-or-nothing thinking protects motivation. The liver thrives under subtraction and consistency, rather than addition and intensity. Energy is one of the earliest improvements. When liver fat decreases, insulin sensitivity improves, blood sugar stabilizes, and muscles receive glucose instead of storing it as fat. This reduces mid-afternoon crashes, brain fog, and dependency on caffeine. Sleep deepens as nighttime insulin drops. Belly fat shrinks slowly but steadily, especially when eating stops earlier in the evening. Men often report better bathroom patterns, improved skin tone, and clearer thinking. These are not cosmetic, they are metabolic. In the bigger picture, liver health influences aging. Aging is not simply the accumulation of years. It is the accumulation of metabolic damage. When the liver manages glucose poorly, the pancreas compensates, the cardiovascular system compensates, and the brain compensates. When the liver sheds fat and inflammation, the burden on other organs decreases. This is why metabolic improvements often come in clusters. Blood pressure drops slightly. Triglycerides drop significantly. HDL rises. Fasting glucose stabilizes. Post-meal glucose spikes become smaller. Waist circumference shrinks. The liver is not a passenger in aging, it is a driver. The 40s represent a turning point because they are metabolically flexible. Damage has started, but rigidity has not yet set in. The 50s involve maintenance. The 60s display outcomes. Men who intervene in their 40s buy decades of quality. Men who intervene in their 50s buy years. Men who intervene in their 60s preserve options. Even in the 70s and 80s, the liver can still improve, but fewer variables remain under control. The earlier the intervention, the more levers available. Medical care plays a role, but lifestyle remains the foundation. Medications for diabetes, cholesterol, or blood pressure reduce burden, but do not replace sleep, food timing, or stress management. Doctors can reduce friction, men must change patterns. The liver listens to patterns more than prescriptions. Culture must also shift. The image of male resilience has been distorted. Real resilience is not working endlessly until collapse. Real resilience is preserving function long enough to support those who rely on you. Men often protect careers, finances, and families, while ignoring the organ that allows those responsibilities to exist in the first place. The irony is brutal men protect everything, except themselves until protecting others becomes impossible. Liver health is not a personal issue, it is a structural one. The process does not require perfection. Perfection is the enemy of metabolic change, because it triggers guilt and abandonment. The liver requires no guilt and no intensity. It requires water instead of soda, earlier instead of later, consistency instead of effort, and awareness instead of fear. Awareness precedes action. Action precedes momentum. Momentum precedes identity. When health becomes identity, maintenance becomes automatic. In summary, the male liver in middle age is not weak, it is overwhelmed. It is overwhelmed by schedules, expectations, stress, convenience, culture, and timing. The liver does not fail suddenly, it fails slowly and silently. But the same silence that hides disease can hide recovery. A liver that collapses quietly can also regenerate quietly. The key is recognizing that aging begins in the organs, not in the calendar. If men understood that liver cancer, diagnosed at 60, often began at 40, behavior would change. If they understood that a 5% weight loss changes, organ scans, motivation would change. If they understood that bedtime is as important as macros, priorities would change. And if they understood that the liver forgives more than any other organ, hope would change. The liver is not asking for miracles. It is asking for time. It is asking for metabolism to align with circadian rhythms again. It is asking for alcohol less frequently, sugar less often, meals earlier, sleep deeper, stress processed, movement consistent, gut supported, and expectations realistic. When the liver receives this, it responds with energy, mental clarity, glucose control, and longevity. Middle age is not the decline of health, it is the negotiation phase, and the liver is the negotiator. Men who listen to the negotiation rewrite their future. Men who ignore it surrender their timeline. The choice is quiet too. Quiet does not mean small. Quiet means powerful.